Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.
It's Radio City Talk. My name's Mick Coyle. I hope you're well. Mental Health Monday is here once again. We like to talk about mental health in public. We do it on the radio every Monday, and thank you to everybody coming on board with the show. Thanks for all your emails, your kind words on social media about the programme as well. We're going to start with an email. I'm going to do it anonymously. I want to inquire about someone being able to come onto your radio station to talk about mental health. With the hashtag Get Britain Talking trending right now. I think it's the perfect time. You've probably seen that on ITV and on social media. This person is a life coach and has been through a lot himself and wants to help others through tough times and let people know there is always someone to talk to. Your help in arranging this will be much appreciated. His name is Layne, and the company he's involved in is called The Right Layne. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, correspondent. What I will do now is click my fingers and make that absolutely happen, because Layne is in the studio. Layne, great to see you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us on Mental Health Monday. Just goes to show when people correspond with the show, we can actually do something about it. It doesn't disappear into the ether.
No, it definitely doesn't.
You're definitely here.
I'm here now. I'm up quite high and it's fun.
Great to see you. We'll hear about your organisation, we'll hear about your own journey, and we'll hear about the sort of advice that you offer now in terms of the coaching that you do. But you've had a difficult time of it. And mental health has been at the heart of your story and your journey, and it goes back to your teenage years. Do you want to sort of take us back to maybe the moments where you realised that your mental health maybe wasn't progressing in a way you were hoping it to?
Yeah, well, kind of started when I was, in high school. I was a teenager, and I realised at the time that I was just angry at everything, man, and I wasn't really doing really well in my studies. I couldn't focus. I had these thoughts of just destruction and self-harm and self-doubt and everything like that. And then from there, it kind of progressed to the actions of this. So rather than just becoming a thought, it was then becoming a reality. So it made, unfortunately, my sort of teenage years and my school years really suffer. And, I sit back now, and I said this the other day to a friend who I was having a conversation with, everything that I've gone through so far up until this date, I'm so glad and thankful that I went through it now, because I'd never be made into the guy that I am now. And everything that I failed at, everything that I did, everything that broke and beaten and scarred me at the time has now made me to the point where I can do what I do and have the impact on people that I do. So, growing up, it was really difficult to understand why I was so kind of, angry at everything and why I failed in every aspect of my kind of education, because I couldn't focus on the task at hand. I couldn't understand that the way I was feeling at the time wasn't just kind of like teenage angst.
Well, I was going to say, because I guess there may have been people around you going, oh, he's going through his difficult teenage time. What sort of, can you give us an example of things that would see you sort of get angry or I was spark something?
I was completely volatile. I would drop a pen and put a hole through a wall. I had no filter with my mouth of anything I ever said. I was such a damaging human being growing up. I was very manipulative. It was just an awful person. And this was something which was completely perpetuated by everybody kind of having the thought of, man, that guy's a weirdo. I had really long hair at the time as well, so I blended into the crowd completely. Everybody ignored me. Nobody wanted to know me because I was a weird kid that had, scars up his arms. I was a weird kid that didn't show up for class every now and then because he was hid in a corner somewhere. So, I had quite a tough time with that. But a lot of people did do the whole, oh man, he's just a teenager. He's going to grow out of it. He'll be fine. He's just got the hormones raging. For me, I suppose at the time, the hormones raging thing was very true because I'm a teenager. It's bound to happen. But then there was always that added bonus of, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like I'm just going through the mere change of adulthood. It feels like the world is imploding. I
was going to say, was it sort of like peaks and troughs, roller coasters up and down, or was it a level of sort of perpetual anger that was always ongoing?
It was just a roller coaster ride of just sheer anger, terror, and pain. It was never kind of like something which I sat back and went, I feel really good today. It was always a dark day. I mean, now I can look back on it and go, you could have changed that so easily because of the way you should look at things in your mindset at the time. But when you're 14, 15, everything seems like a massive deal.
Was that at the age of 14? That's a pretty intense feeling to have if it's there all the time. Was it exhausting? Did you feel like, was it difficult to sort of have those feelings all the time, constantly playing on your mind?
Yeah, it was hugely consuming. Nothing I ever did kind of brought any kind of like joy to what I was doing. You know, I've always been heavily into music. For me, I always think music's such a great therapy, and I'm a huge like rock and metal and blues fan. So for me, I just sit there and I used to play my guitar. No, I'm no good at it, but I used to just kind of act like a rock star in my room because nobody noticed me in real life. I wanted to be something somewhere else. And that was the only kind of like respite I ever got from it. I was a huge gamer at the time, which consumed a huge part of my life. But then I always realized that wasn't making me happy because I think one of the things I was lacking at the time, now looking back at it, was the social integration of anything. I was sat on a game which took up all this time of my life, and I wasn't socializing with anybody other than a virtual person, which didn't really benefit me anyway. So other than that, you look at like 90% of my day, it was just, I felt as though it was just torturous because there was nothing letting up about it. There was no kind of part of the time in the day where I didn't think, man, I would be better served well in a dark room, probably with a razor blade at some point. And, you know, let's do some damage because that's more fun than what I'm doing right now.
That idea that as a 14-year-old or a teenager, you were judging sort of self-harm to be a better option than the things that you were doing goes to show that, you know, the way you were viewing the world at that age was maybe very, very unlike the way other people would have been feeling at that time.
Yeah. I've always had quite an extreme personality, though.
But did you feel, in terms of the isolation that you felt at the moment, you were looking for that social group, but that when you looked for different outlets, you were doing it in ways which sort of continued the isolation, the music, the video games as well. Were there options at the time to do other things? Were you turning your back on the opportunity
definitely.
to be with friends?
I was kind of like my own worst enemy at this point. You know, I always say to a lot of people now, there is no excuses for not having options anymore. Everybody has an option, especially in this Western world we live in now, where everything's afforded to us, and there's no way that you can't find an opportunity around your corner. At the time, okay, let's go back, 14, 15 years. There's still options around. I just avoided them because I was too cowardice to do anything about it, man, because I didn't want to be in a situation where I didn't have like-minded people around me because I didn't want to keep getting the same judgment over and over again where people were going, oh, man, he's just a teenager. Why is he such a weirdo? Why is he covered in blood all the time? I didn't want that kind of thing because I got it enough from everywhere else. And that small minority group of people who were in the kind of similar boat to we didn't really want to be around each other because in some ways, being a kid, you always want to be kind of like, have you ever heard them when they go, oh yeah, well, mine's way worse than yours? And then you sit there and go, yeah, but mine's way worse than yours. Everybody at that point when you're in that situation always wanted to be the top dog of who was worse. And I was unfortunately one of them people. You wanted to view yourself as the worst person that's been ever dealt this bad hand. And then you didn't really want to sit around people who did the same thing because it just become challenging and exhausting.
So that idea that people would say, or it wasn't worth explaining how you were feeling to people because they go, oh, it's just teenage years, or it's just because you're a, quote, weirdo.
Yeah.
There must have been adults around you.
Yeah, there was.
Who could have offered you maybe a little bit of sanctuary? Were there people you could turn to who were offering a different perspective on something that would essentially reinforce your own view of yourself? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I had people around me. You know, my mum was an incredible person with that. She was always in my corner, but the big problem was I was always pulling in the wrong direction, so there was never that kind of meet in the middle factor. She was always trying to do the best she could for me. You know, and my grandparents were exactly the same, and we were very close in that sense. But if I'm pulling the wrong way, you're never going to reach me. So at this point, no matter what she did, because I kind of wanted to socially isolate myself anyway, I didn't take the help. I didn't want the help. Everybody at this point was my enemy because I just felt as though whoever it was that was trying to help me always had that thought of, oh man, you're just pathetic. Come on, let's just get you sorted because you shouldn't be like this. You should be enjoying. And I always used to get the same thing. You should just be enjoying your teenage years, the best years of your life. I mean, for me, they were hell, but now I look back on them and think, man, if I had the opportunity to change that round now, would I have done anything different? And I can't say that I probably would have.
How long was that going on for? That period of time, those period of feelings, the self-harm?
Oh, God, years. So, you know, and I'll be brutally honest, man, up until maybe 8, 9, 10 months ago, you know, where I relapse at some point and go, that seems like the best option today. But getting older, you kind of, especially when you're in a job situation or when you're in a, you know, very social. I'm very, very sociable now. You know, I speak to everybody and anybody. Hiding it is always a pain. I've got scars everywhere, and people see them the minute they shake my hand, which is great because I go, well, they're my battle wounds, man. But if I keep doing them now and they see fresh ones, they go, man, he's only 28. He's still doing this. So at the time, I got to 16, and that was my first suicide attempt. So I took from going from self-harm to the extreme because I just clicked one day and went, I've had enough. I don't want to do it anymore. So self-harm then became a coping mechanism at that point. And when you don't get satisfied by that, you find a different route. You find something else that's going to damage you in some way.
What was happening in regard to a diagnosis? What was happening in regard to maybe someone intervening from a medical point of view and saying, you know what, Layne's experience is not what we quote as the normal experience of a teenager. There's clearly self-damage there, and there's clearly ongoing threats to life.
Well, at the beginning of it all, when I was pre-18, they have to put you under a child therapy kind of thing, which I attended a handful of times. But again, because I wanted to socially isolate and didn't really want to be around people, that was hell for me. So like you and I now having this conversation, there was no way in hell that I would ever talk to you this openly or even this extensively, really. My vocabulary was quite Neanderthal at this point. So when they gave me this therapy, I didn't want to talk, I didn't want to do anything. The minute I sat in front of them, they asked me what was wrong, and I just said nothing. I don't know why I'm here. And now looking back on that, I'm thinking, you're just a moron, man. Why didn't you just sit and talk? Because you possibly could have got help.
What should you have said then?
I would have told them that I have no idea why I feel the way I do. Because it's so confusing. You don't wake up one morning and go, right, I feel today like the world's going to end because of X, Y, and Z. You wake up and go, man, I feel crap. What do I do? What next? And you don't have an answer at all. You're looking for somebody to give you the answer. And when somebody doesn't, and when somebody asks you why you feel the way you do, you feel a bit let down in some ways. You go, well, you're the professional. You should tell me. If I knew what was wrong with me, and I used to use this line all the time with them, if I knew what was wrong, do you really think I'd be sat in front of you? Because I'd be fixing the problem. I mean, I don't ever say that I'm a stupid person. I'm quite intelligent. On paper, I'm not very academic. But, I always pride myself on being very well-read. And I'm not stupid enough to say to myself, well, I wouldn't take the help if it was handed to me. But at the same time, if I could figure out for myself, don't you think I would? So when you stand in front of these people, the only answer at this point is they were like, well, we'll speak to your mum. And for me, that was hell, because I didn't want her involved in anything at this point. Not because I didn't care for her, but everybody was an enemy because they were all trying to get something out of me. They were trying to make me talk. They were trying to understand me. And for me, I was just going, this is an overload. This is way too much.
Do you think a label would have helped?
Yes, to a degree. But I also think it could have been detrimental as well, because I feel as though now, especially now in this 2019 going into 2020, there's too many labels out there. Too many people have something rather than just going, okay, we'll figure out what's wrong instead of going, well, you've just got this. Because it's so quick to medicate now, because the medication thing is the very first thing they go to. They did with me. They got this talking therapy, and then they didn't technically label me. They just said he's going through a really hard time being a teenager and we think he's a bit depressed. So here you go. Here's some pills. Try them. Again, being a person who's stubborn, you don't want to take them because you feel as though they're going to help you. And in some ways, going back to the previous point, you want to be the worst person in the world. So you get looked at as, holy, this guy's really bad and let's help him. And even though you don't want the help, you want the pity. I talk about a lot of people saying about the pity party. We play it quite often, a lot of people. And at the time I was playing it extensively on my own with a party hat and a streamer in hand. And the minute they got the medication, I took it once and thought, this is hell. It's put me to sleep straight away and now I can't get up in the morning. So this is actually worse because I still feel exactly the same. But all they said to me is, wait 3 weeks. I'm like, man, I haven't got 3 weeks. I'm already planning in my head not being around in 3 weeks, but you're telling me to wait for this magical drug to kick in, which all it's doing is making me walk around like a zombie and feel sick. There was no middle ground there. It felt as though that particular whole situation of having the combination of talking therapy and medication just made me go into this total spiral, which is actually designed to help. But at the time, you don't think that. It
strikes me that people were aware that there was something not quite right. People were aware that you might need some extra help. At this point, you're 16. You're still officially a child as well. At what point does that story move on to the next level? Obviously, you're getting closer to your 18th birthday. You're soon going to be an adult in your own regard as well. How did that change the story?
Well, for me, leaving school was a huge bonus because it was hell for me, and I didn't like it, and I didn't want to be there, and didn't focus. And now I don't regret things in life, but I think, well, I could have done way more than I did at the point, but it's led me to here, so I'm happy with it. But going after that, going to 18, I thought to myself, well, what can I do with myself? And college was the next step for me. So I found something which kind of sparked some enjoyment in me. The older I got at this point, didn't stop the feelings and didn't stop the problems. It just made them a bit more, being older, you're a bit more aware of things, so you can kind of plan them a bit more. So it becomes a bit more sadistic in itself because you can really pick on yourself a bit more because you've got more experience, you're a bit more knowledgeable and aware of what you're doing as opposed to being a teenager and just filled with this rage because you're going through hormonal changes as well.
That's interesting because when you said that, I thought you might say that because you weren't a teenager anymore, removing the hormones from the situation made the situation easier. But actually,
no, it didn't change it.
No, it didn't change it, and in many ways, it just changed the way you thought about your feelings and your feelings towards yourself.
Well, it kind of became learned behaviour at that point. And again, like I said at the very beginning, I was still this horrible, vile, manipulation-driven person, and I was an awful, awful human being at this point. I always remember being in college, and it seemed like a great time because you could dress how you wanted, you could express yourself in whatever way. I was an art student at this point, so you can imagine, my art was pretty dark at the same time as well, and I tried to bring that out in what I did, but all it did is kind of, in a weird way, excite that purpose of going, oh man, I've made some really dark art here. I really like it. I thrived off it, and then I got excited by what I did. And I don't suppose that helped either. But at this point, I was going through such a spiral of moving from place to place, and I didn't ever stay put. I'm quite a whirlwind of a person. I'm quite a transient in that way because I don't really stay put very long because I'm quite jumpy and impatient. And then, roll on 19, and then the second suicide attempt happens. And you think from the first one I'd learn that it wasn't the way to go. But no, I don't listen to myself. I'm too stupid for that. And I tried it again, and it failed again, and I ended up back in hospital. And you just feel like everybody looks at you and goes, really? Again? The first time wasn't enough. The pain, the situation, the fact that you failed it did not deter you from the second time to go, well, you're going to fail it again. And the more and more you do it, you go, well, I'm going to get it right this time. And in some ways, looking back on it now, you do sit back and think, you're like 90% of, I want this to work. And then like 10% of you is like, I really hope it doesn't work so I can kind of live through this. And everything's better after this point because this is my breaking point. And even as a teenager, you think that there is like that rock bottom. And there is. But rock bottom doesn't necessarily have a way out of it. You're just digging a further hole. And it just didn't end. It just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled. It kept going, basically. This perpetual helter-skelter of the same actions over and over again, the definition of madness and insanity. And it took me a long time to get to any point where I went, I think this is enough.
That's it's such an interesting point that people have, and it's kind of a non-existent idea that your life goes in a certain way, and rock bottom is hit, and then rock bottom, and then you work your way back out of rock bottom. But it's actually quite interesting to hear from your point of view that idea that rock bottom is hit, and then things don't get better. Just things stumble along at rock bottom for that period of time. Because I think people like to try and imagine their life in almost like a roller coaster. They try and imagine like a line that's going up and down and the highs and the lows. And
the highs and lows don't necessarily mean highs of happiness. It just means you're just maybe a meter above rock bottom at this point. It's not necessarily a high. You're just not necessarily at the bottom.
Well, at what point, if you're on a point of at zero with the point of you want to be at a 10. When do you hit 1? When did you hit 2? Was there a moment of hope or light where you started to think, you know what, maybe I am moving away. I'm not where I want to be, but maybe I'm moving away from where I definitely don't want to be.
So my last attempt was Christmas Day 2015. And I remember being at a point where I was found, and the operator on the phone was talking to my mum, and she said, he can't move. He's being sick out of nose, mouth, wherever he can be. And I'm not getting much response out of him. I'm kind of watching him fade. And at this point, they said to them, we're sending out an ambulance by all means, right? And, at this time, the hospital is only 8 minutes away. And if you put your pedal to the metal, it's quicker. And they said to her, but you're going to be prepared to do CPR on him. And she said, I can't. He's been sick everywhere, and I can't stop him. And they were like, but you're going to have to because you might have to save him. So at that point, I was unaware of all this. I got to hospital and the incredible nurses and doctors, crowded around me and they prodded and poked and they got me back. And I was quite out of it at this point. And they said to my mum, they were like, he was about 10 minutes away. You were very lucky here that you got him here quick enough. And when I came to, I had my own room. Well, not my own room, but it was on a ward where I was attached to like a 8.5, 9 foot lead to a heart monitor. My heart rate wouldn't decrease, so they had to keep the observation. So I was there for 5 days. And while I was on there, I found somewhat inner peace in myself because it sounds awful, but I really enjoyed being in that bed. There was something so peaceful about it. And after I found out about all of this, when I got home eventually and what they told her, something inside of me just went, okay, you've had enough. So I'm currently writing a book and I talk about this thing when I do any kind of coaching with people. I have this thing called the matchbox theory. And this is through my own experience. So I look at the matchbox theory as being this. Rock bottom is your dark room. You're in a room like we're in now, but it's completely pitch black. But somebody's been kind enough to leave you a box of 100 matches. Now, 100 matches, that's great. You got light. You got a little bit of heat. But the point of that matchbox is to say that basically your life and when you make all these decisions and when you do these little things to try and recover or feel better, be it suicide, self-harm, whatever it is, they're all kind of like small moments of elation. You strike that match and you will get that small moment. You'll get that light for however long it takes to burn. My question is, how long will it take you to get bored of striking the matches until you go, there's got to be a light switch around here somewhere? So what am I going to do? Am I going to strike all 100 matches and sit there in the dark for the rest of my days? Or am I going to use them matches to go and find the damn light? Once you find the light, it doesn't end there. The light switch is on, but the rent's due every day. You've got to earn the right to have that light on. So you've got to work at it. It's not something that you just turn the light on and everything's better. It's not. The matchboxes are just there as a means to an end to go, I'm going to use these moments of elation to get me through something to get to the bigger purpose, which is finding that light source. If you don't earn the right for the light to be on, like you pay rent, you're going to go back in the dark again. But how confident are you that you've got a full matchbox left?
How do you pay the rent? That's the question. What sort of things have you found in your life that means you don't have to go back to the match?
So one of my favourite authors and speakers is called Simon Sinek. And he labels himself as a serial optimist. I label myself as a serial positive thinker. Because now that I'm in this situation, I never used to be, by the way. Everything was glass half empty, it was doom and gloom, I was a total ass. Now it's very different. So the way you pay the rent is you go, another way of looking at it, I say to people, you can always be positive. When they go, how'd you be positive about everything? Because I'd rather be annoyingly positive than somebody who's miserable all the time now. So I say to them, positivity is not an action. It's also not a word. It's a complete state of mind and being. You have to force it every morning and eventually it becomes a habit. We create habits all the time because we keep doing the same thing over and over again. Positivity is exactly the same. So you pay the rent by doing exactly that. You wake up and you make every conscious effort that everything you do is like you're paying into some form of bank account to say, that keeps me going a little longer. And eventually you become a millionaire at this. And you can start giving out loans to help other people get out of that room too.
But that's interesting that actually it starts off not as I guess you almost don't have to believe it, but you just have to force yourself to be optimistic. And then
not necessarily optimistic, because I'm not optimistic. I'm positive, I'm not optimistic.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily have to do that. You just need to go, how bad do I want this? Am I happy being in this awful situation? Because if I am, don't do anything. You've got to want to do it. I don't deal with people who don't want to help themselves. I have no time for that because it's like kicking a dead horse. And that's not to say you're a lost cause. It just means right now at that point in life, like I was at one point in my life, if someone came to me with my mentality that I have now, I would have told them, go away.
So of course this is the question, because of course people find their way through these difficult situations in many different ways, and they've told their stories in many different ways across different programs here on the program. And it can be in a million and one different things, and people find their own way. What sort of things do you say to people that broadens it out to make it about them, and so that they can maybe take aspects of your story and draw it into their own lives? How do you broaden what is a really, really sort of unique sort of story, but bring it to life for other people?
My famous thing that I say to everybody, when I say famous to me, is there's no growth in comfort. You can't grow if you're comfortable at all, because it means that you just accept what is and what is now. If you make yourself slightly uncomfortable and make yourself go, I really need to push at this because I have a lot riding on it, you're going to put more work into it, and the quality of work and the quality of time that you put in is going to be far greater than you sitting there apathetically going, I really wish I had a different life. It's only you that can change it, nobody else.
It's so interesting to hear sort of how you sort of view life and how you sort of measure sort of the variance of success that can come along and how you can make decisions as well. When it's come from such a dark place, that positivity around being proactive, taking proactive steps, which, we can all do in our lives, has come from a point of suicide attempts. It's come from a point of depression and self-harm and those really, really dark places. And you described it as well about how you were using suicide and self-harm as a coping mechanism, that your proactive steps to make yourself feel better were ultimately negative steps. And yet, now as an older guy, looking back at that guy, the whole thing is flipped around.
Yeah, definitely.
You're talking about positivity. You're talking about being proactive. You're helping other people move forward in a way that Layne, living with mental illness at an early age, maybe wasn't able to see or do. That's quite a turnaround. In terms of the way you view the world, the way you view life, the way you view yourself, that's a big old shift, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and say, man, I did this all by myself. I didn't. The decisions and the actions that I take and the mindset that I have is all me. I'll take credit for that. But I had a lot of help. I had a lot of people who were there for me, who at the time I took very for granted, who I didn't want around me at the time, who I was so damaging to, like I said, all the way through this. And they still never gave in on me. And I have a lot of people to thank. And if I sat on this show and thanked everybody individually, I'd be here forever. But if anybody is listening at this point, I'm going to thank you now. Thank you for being there, regardless of how much of an awful person I was, because I wouldn't have got to this point without you. But the people who were awful to me, I wouldn't have got through to that point without you either.
Right.
Because I look at it and think, the strongest warriors are made by how many times you can be beaten and get back up. And I have a big thing about warriors and very, very battle-drawn people. I wanted to be a soldier, I wanted to be a firefighter. And for me, I look at it and go, I got knocked down so many times. People helped me up, but ultimately the only reason I kept going back down was because of my own fault, not theirs. They were there to help and support me, my family, my friends, whoever, teachers, tutors, random people that I meet during work. They were all great. They were all incredible people. And now it's only now that I'm at this stage of my life that I realise what value they brought to my life. And I took that for granted. So all of the mindset stuff is my own kind of thing. And it all drew from, again, the matchbox thing. I got so bored of striking the matches, man. That small, tiny moment of elation was not enough. I wanted more. And now I wake up every day and I go, you got this, dude.
If you want to hear more about Layne's story, he's up and about on Instagram as well. The book's due out next year at some point.
Yeah, I set my deadline for August.
Brilliant stuff. Well, that's Christmas 2020 sorted.
Yeah.
Maybe so. The Right Layne 19 as well on Instagram as well. We'll get all the links up on our social media. The Right Layne, and that's Layne, the number 19 as well on Instagram. If you want to hear more about Layne, the work that he does, his ongoing journey and story, which I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again, Layne. Thank you for your time today. Thanks for joining us on the programme. Thanks for sharing your story.
Incredible.
And
Thank you.
It's really been really fascinating insight. Don't forget, if you've been affected by any of the issues that we've mentioned on the programme, you can find out more information about mental health services close to you, both from a medical profession, but also some of the social services that are available to you as well. hubofhope.co.uk is a website you can go to, type in your postcode and you can find services close to you. There's 1,000,001 different things depending on what you're going through. You don't have to go through them alone. hubofhope.co.uk. Mental Health Monday from Radio City Talk.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.